Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Match Points with USPTA. I'm Ramona Husaru, and today I'm speaking with Lorenzo Beltrame. Lorenzo, so fun to see you. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you today.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time. It's always a pleasure talking to you. It's been some time that I haven't seen you, so it's good to see you. And for those coaches at home that don't know too much about you, you are originally from Italy.
From Milan, Italy, yes.
You came to the US quite some time ago.
I came when I was 27 years old on my birthday, and that was 30 years ago, yeah.
And then from there you worked with two icons in tennis, Dr. Jim Lear and Dr. Jack Ruppel at the Human Performance Institute here in Orlando.
Yes.
And you were there for 20 years as the director of tennis for that program. And during that time, you got to work with Pete Sampras, Jim Courier, many other former number ones. How impressive. I would love to hear your experiences from there and help our coaches kind of learn from those experiences that you've had to really help our players compete better, be able to perform at a high level, and become a little bit more mentally tough. So can you walk us through that transition from when you were working with Dr. Jim Lear and Dr. Jack Ruppel at the HPI, the things that you kind of worked on and emphasized, and how did that translate into some of the things that you're doing today, which are pretty much running your own business,
yes,
consulting with many academies and college teams, and working with some of the top pro players out there?
I played tennis. Tennis is my sport, so I grew up playing. I played in Europe, as you mentioned, I'm from Italy, and then when I came to the United States, I was already coaching in Italy, but I came here and I was always attracted to high performance. I basically focus on that in that space, and so when I heard that Dr. Lear and Ruppel and Pat Echeberry moved here, I was in Orlando and I came and I introduced myself and we started this 20 years journey. I started there as you said, director of tennis, director of the training of the players that would come here to train with us, but over time I started traveling with many players. I became a traveling coach for many of them, and then at a certain point, we started an academy, junior development, and then eventually Dr. Lear asked me to become the director of the performance coaching for the athletic department of the HPI. So I kind of, at all effect, start doing what I do now, which is, some people call it mental training. We like to call it performance coaching.
And obviously that translates into so much into what we're seeing today, where the game has changed so much and more players are expanding their teams from just their tennis coach and their fitness coach, but now they have a mental coach or a psychologist on the team. So there's no question that this part of performance is becoming even more and more needed because the level of competition is so much higher than before, right?
That's right, yeah. When I was in my playing days, we did a lot of tennis. Fitness was kind of started getting into it, so eventually strength and conditioning took a predominant part of the training of athletes. The mental aspect of it took a little longer to get in, but now is adopted by pretty much all the top players. You know, they say it or they don't say it, they have someone that helps them into this space. And you know, Dr. Lear at the Human Performance Institute many years ago, he saw this coming, and he created a team of experts here in Lake Nona where players could come and train with. So they would come either with their coaches or without. They found coaches, they found psychologists, nutritionists, strength and conditioning coaches, physiologists, and physiotherapists, all in one place. And so that was, to my knowledge, was the first time that actually a team was built around players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you have this amazing experience working with them here in the US, but you also have the perspective of the European School of Tennis, where you've developed there, but also worked with a lot of European players. So altogether, I think you have a unique perspective that I would love to kind of dive deeper today to learn a little bit about how you see things and how you're helping your players right now kind of improve in that regard. So what would you say are the main components of a player? What does it take to perform at a high level at this point with what's going on in tennis right now?
So the way the image that I like to use is that a player is a system of buckets that they communicate with each other. You know? So I don't like the pie that is tennis is 20% this, 30% of that. I don't think it works for me. I think that a player to be successful has to fill every bucket to the best of their ability. So technically they have to be very competent to be able to play at the highest level. And technique is already a huge bucket. Then you have to have knowledge of strategy, how to play a point, what is your strength, your identity. Then you have to be a phenomenal athlete these days. So, and then I think you have to be mentally strong and mentally tough, and also you have to somehow take care of yourself as a person. And also have a lifestyle and relationship that you develop that help you be able to feel good about yourself so you can perform well. So I think each athlete needs to fill up this bucket as much as possible.
Wonderful explanation. I mean, it does take quite a bit, right, to become well-rounded. But why don't we tap into the mental aspect a little bit more, because I think it's a topic that a lot of the coaches want to learn about. If we were to kind of define mental toughness, right, we hear this term quite a bit. How would you define it in your own words? What is mental toughness?
First of all, mental toughness is a skill. It's a skill that can be learned and developed over time through training. I believe that mental toughness is the ability to compete and problem solve and perform on demand, under pressure, when it really matters.
So competing under pressure is obviously something that we train our players to do a lot of, right? And get them ready to be ready for those moments. And pressure over time can affect the player, right? On and off the court. So for pressure for, let's say, a young player who's like maybe 10, 12 years old, could be because, you know, maybe the parents are putting that pressure
ambitious
on the results a little bit, right? As they get a little older and they get closer to college, maybe some of the pressure comes from having really good ranking, good results, so they have a shot at getting a good scholarship, right? When we go into the pro level, obviously the pressure is even higher because the stakes are higher, you got contracts, you have people that depend on you, maybe you have to defend some points, and not to mention the media is constantly comparing you with all the all-time records and all the things amazing things that are out there, right? So this pressure is constantly there for the players. Can you tell us a little bit about what are some of the strategies that players can use to navigate maybe these phases of developing as a player?
First of all, you painted the picture the way I like to be painted. Pressure to me is the ability to deal with pressure is a muscle. So you start when you're very little by competing, and maybe there is a couple of people watching and nobody knows if you won or lost after a while. But nevertheless, for the little guy, that is a lot of pressure already. Then pressure goes bigger and bigger as you progress in your career, because as you said, then there is more points, the recruiting phase, and then in college, you play college tennis, you know that the coaches want you to win those matches, and then at the pro level, you depend on that for your living. So pressure builds up. And so as it builds up, I think, you know, Billie Jean said pressure is a privilege. I like to say that pressure indicates your level of success. The more pressure you can handle, the more successful you are. So it's always a companion of the journey of a player. And so to me, what is very important is that players accept this concept, that if you are ambitious and you want to win, you will always have pressure. So I don't like when parents, coaches, people say, go out there and just have fun. You know, I feel like it's misleading the kids. You know, you want to go out there and you want to get uncomfortable in a space that you enjoy. So tennis is fun, right? Tennis players like to play tennis, but when they compete, there is this pressure, and we have to accept it. We have to learn how to deal with, so that we can build this muscle over time. So one day the kids can play college tennis, one day they can play Davis Cup or Billie Jean Cup or in a final of a slam.
I love it. I love how you describe that it's basically a learned skill.
Yeah.
It's not something that, yes, maybe some people are born with, you know, more of an inclination into that regard, but then at the end of the day, it's something that we can learn and train and get better at, right? So really, it comes down to how this pressure is being perceived, right?
Absolutely.
Like you just said. Go ahead.
No, I think that skill, muscle. I like the word muscle because a muscle develops over time by exercising it. So you go to a gym, you pick up some weights, and you do specific exercise to build a specific muscles. So the ability to deal with pressure requires that you challenge yourself. It requires that you go out of your comfort zone, that you start competing. A lot of young players, unfortunately, they don't like how pressure feels. Also, they feel that when you feel the pressure, you feel nervous, and nervous is something that you shouldn't feel. So they start feeling inadequate because they get, the jittery. So they try to avoid the activities that makes them nervous. So you see very often in the academies or at the junior level players that kind of run away from competing, but they love drilling. So we have to push our players to accept that if they get nervous before a match or during a match, and sometimes they might not be able to deal with nerves as well as they would like, it's okay, as long as they go out there and they put themselves on the line. So we don't want to put a 12-year-old in a Davis Cup tie between Italy and the United States. They wouldn't be able to handle it, but we want to build them to be able to do that. And so little by little, we want to expose them to the stresses so that they learn the skills necessary to cope with that. And that, I think, is actually one of the biggest benefits that competitive players get out of their career, is this personal growth into be able to deal with adversity, deal with challenges, deal with pressure or other situations that they might be uncomfortable, but over time they become more acceptable.
And it's almost like the more you do it, the more you get used to it, just like with anything else, right? It's repetition. And the perspective that you just mentioned, where it comes to enjoying the battle. So that pressure becomes something that you're enjoying and you're having fun just dealing with that situation where you're embracing the challenge, right? And you just get better at that.
It's a semantic thing, it's a language. Right. When you say have fun, most people perceive something that is rewarding the moment. But a tennis match might have moments where you don't see the reward right there. It's hard. I'm dealing with this guy that doesn't want to lose, and the referee makes mistakes. People are cheering against me. I wouldn't say that that's fun, but it is enjoyable and definitely is rewarding. So I have to look at the long-term reward of my efforts when I'm out there on a tennis court. It's not about having fun every single moment. The more I enjoy, the better it is, because it keeps me in the game. But the ultimate reward of a competitive career is the person that I develop with those transferable skills that I learned through the game that I can apply to anything else I do in life. So to me, the better word than fun is enjoy, as you said very well, and rewarding. If I see the reward of my efforts, then I'm more likely to continue investing in myself, which I think is the key.
Let's take an example. For you have a 10 to 12-year-old player that comes and works with you, and their goal is to maybe get a college scholarship, play a very high Division I team, or possibly go on the Pro Tour after that. So when would be a good time to start working on mental training, and what would the priorities be as they keep advancing and they keep maturing?
I think that it's good to start early. I don't necessarily work with 10 years old in what I do, but I think they could. I think they could get some of the basics necessary to understand this very complicated area. If they learn how to deal with the timing between points, or how to use a changeover to their advantage, or how to prepare a match, or how to prepare a practice, how to behave in a practice, how to talk to themselves during a tough moment of a match. So these are skills that I think you can start working on very early on. I love when I work with the young players. First of all, they have to have had already a little bit of experience competing, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. But if I work with a very young player at that age, I always want to involve parents. And I work with them along with the parent, so that the parent hopefully enjoys the process as well, but they can learn from me, I guess, what they can do to help their kids grow into this space. So to me, you start as early as you want to get the discipline that this area needs to be trained. I don't I don't like the idea that is innate, that either you have it or you don't. I refuse that. As a coach, I refuse that. I feel like there is plenty of things that anybody can do to become a better competitor, to dominate fears and anger, and to become players able to have this best possible attitude out there. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of the mental toughness is actually technical. It's the way you behave, the way you talk to yourself, and there is a better way to behave and there is a better way to talk to yourself. So as you learn a better way to hit a forehand, you just learn a better way to act and think on a tennis court.
I love the fact that you brought up the parents in the development of a player. And we know that sometimes if a player is struggling, the parents would maybe call up a mental coach and say, hey, can you work with my son or daughter? And then they send them to the training, but the parents don't necessarily maybe get involved in that training or are up to speed with what they're working on. So when they go home, maybe they're being exposed to some other things that are competing against what they're learning during the mental training, right? So I love the fact that you brought that up. Tell us the importance of why you're involving parents in that process and why there needs to be like a teamwork, and why does the parent need to kind of be familiar with those concepts?
I think the concept is pretty simple. If a tennis coach wants to teach a better forehand to a student, spends a couple of hours, give him a tennis lesson, and then the student goes to another coach that tells him completely different, the kid is not going to learn very fast. So if a player starts a journey into investing into creating new narratives, new perspective, and new motivations, and they learn how to start seeing things from a perspective of personal growth, contribution, enjoyment, and then they go home and parents talk about results, fame, money, comparison with other kids, then what you do gets destroyed by the other person. So to me, parents, coaches, everyone around the kids should have the possibility of grow into a better communicator so that the player benefits from it. I believe that the player is at the center of the project. Everybody tries to help the kid, but very often we notice that the player grows much faster than the people around, and we cannot have that happen. We have to make sure that everyone around the players grow at the same speed or even faster to be able to guide them. As you said, I come from Europe, and one of my biggest clients is the Italian Tennis Federation, and we created a model and a system there where the player is the center, but everybody around gets helped to become better at what they do.
And when the players are young, the parents are really the ones funding this whole team, right?
Especially in the United States.
And they kind of need to be involved and be on the same page because, like you said, you want everybody to speak the same language. You want the culture to be very, very consistent across the team so that everybody helps the player go in the direction that everybody agrees on, right?
Parents are fundamental. And among the other things that you said, that I did a lot of things. One thing that I did, I parent two tennis players. My son and my daughter both end up playing Division I college. And I got to coach and parent two tennis players after many, many years of experience coaching. And yet, probably was the most difficult thing I ever done in my career, because when you see your kid out there not playing well, suffering, losing, and it's very difficult for a parent to accept that your son or daughter will be out there by themselves and you cannot do anything about it. But that's the beauty of it. In one aspect of their life, they don't receive any help. They have to problem solve. They have to overcome their challenges by themselves. They are relatively safe on a tennis court, right? The worst thing that can happen is that they lose their match. So the amount of emotion, though, that hits a parent that watches their kids is very high. Watching my own son and daughter compared to watch the players that you mentioned before, you get into their matches, but nothing compared to watching your kids. And so you have to learn to behave on the sideline. You have to learn how to talk after a match is over. You have to learn how to talk before a match starts. And so all that, I believe that is something that a parent should invest in if they want really their kids to have a productive career.
Well, you're being very humble with your children. We know that your son played at Harvard, where he was very successful, and your daughter played at a Division I school in Alabama. So you're being very humble in that regard, because you did an excellent job helping them, coaching them, and develop into these amazing adults that now take on to do other things, amazing things. So thank you for sharing that. So we know that players work toward this area where they want to be able to compete almost in an automatic mode, which a lot of people refer to the zone, or Dr. Lear refers to it as the ideal performance state. What does it take for a player to get in that zone, and what are the main components that they need to work on?
So, yes, you said right. Dr. Lear called it the ideal performance state. I changed the language a little bit, and I call it the high performance route. Some people call it the zone, the flow, but it's that ideal state or better state that you can have to achieve your goals. So I feel that, I call it the high performance route, because I feel like it takes you where you want to go. If you are en route, you probably are more efficient in your journey than if you start going off route. So to me, mental toughness at the end, we define it at the beginning, but it is the ability to get en route before you need to, stay en route for as long as you need to, and if by any chance you get off route, you have the tools to get back on. And the en route is typically defined with words like confidence, determination, sense of peace, a sense of calm, focus, and a sense of enjoyment, that for sure. And off route, instead, there is nerves, anger, discouragement, embarrassment, all sort of those emotions that don't allow you to compete at your best. So to me, a mentally tough player is an athlete that is able to get en route, stay there, and maintain. But that is impossible. That's why I didn't like the word ideal, because we live in a world that is not ideal. When you play a match, it's never ideal. And therefore, for me, the players that I work with, they have to spend time to imagine the conditions that they are going to have to deal with their asset and their liabilities. So, for example, if they expect to play a match against a player with certain characteristics that they don't like, they have to digest that before they go on court. They have to imagine getting angry on a tennis court. They have to imagine being nervous. And they have to imagine themselves to succeed. So they have to be able to give themselves advice on what they need to do to overcome the inevitable challenges that we'll feel when we are on court. Because we want to be en route, but every force out there tries to push us off. So our job is to really be aware when you start drifting and train the solutions so that you can go back in. And these solutions are all based in behaviors and in narratives that you use to help yourself, and obviously of managing the physiology with breathing and relaxation exercise if you want, or activation, as a matter of fact. So you have to know when to do what. But all the athletes that I work with, they have to do a pre-training phase, 15-20 minutes, where they kind of think about what do I do today, what are the challenges that I have to deal with, and how I'm going to deal with them. And I call this writing the screenplay. Just like an actor, you go on stage prepared to bring to life a character, a particular kind of personality, and you know what the scene is going to look like. So I want my athletes to know, this is what I'm going to deal with today, and this is the character that I want to bring out there, and this is what I need to do to be able to do that. During the matches, during practice, they have very specific things that they have to do, also based on Dr. Jim Lear, the 16-second cure. He did 4 stages. I added 1, so it's 5 these days for me, but nevertheless, it's based on the brilliant work that he did. And it still, to me, is one of the best tools we have. We just make sure that these phases in between points are built with the right with the right skills, because each one of them requires skills. And then obviously there is a post, I call it the debriefing of a match or a practice, which I think is extremely important, because any narrative that you create after a match becomes internalized, and then little by little, if it's not the right narrative, is going to undermine your ability to have the emotions that you want to have. So I think that every event, practice or matches, has to start with the preparation. I like to call the screenplay, and I make them do it in writing. Then there is the acting, if you want, and then there is the debriefing. And the debriefing is, yes, it's basically the pre of the screenplay of the next time. I think that unfortunately very often players and coaches see the training just what you do on the court. The moment I hit my first ball, then I hit my last ball, I put the racket, and that's finished. Instead, to me, training starts when I start preparing mentally, physically. Then there is the on-court part of the training, and then there is the debriefing, which can be done on the court or off the court, but you are not done the training session or the match until the debriefing is done.
Very interesting approach. I mean, I love the fact that you're emphasizing the preparation and how much the preparation really gets you to perform in an automatic way during the match, because you have spent enough hours, you have visualized, you have already set up yourself for that particular moment, so that in that particular moment it's not something that you react to. You actually have done it enough that you already know what to do in those situations.
Yeah, a lot of people, rightly so, talk about playing instinctively, you know, and I think though that those instincts need to be educated. Then you can trust that you can play instinctively. So training to me is almost more important than matches, because that's where I build my instincts. In matches I put them to service, but if I talk to a professional athlete, he would tell me that half of the hours spent training, they're not as productive as they could be because of many reasons, typically in attitude. So think about it, 5-6 hours a day of practice, I only take advantage of half of them. At the end of the month, I am maybe 3% less than what I could be. And at the end of the year, I'm a lot farther behind. And so even if in matches I can give 100%, it's not as good as what I could have if I train properly all the time. To be productive in training, you need to be prepared. And at the end, you need to capture the experience and what you want to bring forward.
So let's give some examples about the importance of rituals and what some of those rituals should be, maybe in between points that players should engage. And then at the same time, what does the narrative need to look like during those rituals to help our coaches?
To me, to summarize, is that a player needs to go through certain stages in between points. We have 25 seconds, right? And so the first part will have to be some sort of a regroup the body language. I'm not saying that immediately after a point a player is going to be like, yeah, come on, if you double fault, probably you do have some sort of a gesture that is avoidable, but at the same time is very natural. But we give a budget of a couple of seconds to regroup. So the first thing to take care of is the body, and make sure that the body displays the emotions that a player wants to have, but might not have yet. Then there is a second phase, which is the typical the phase where you walk to pick up your balls or go to the ball boys or ball girls. Maybe you can go to the towel if you need extra time, where you engage what I call the coaching voice. Now, the coaching voice is the voluntary voice that you need to train to give you the narrative necessary to really manage your emotions. So I can fake that I'm not upset, but I'm still upset. But by the end of that moment, when I drop the towel and I move away, I shouldn't be upset anymore, because with my inner voice, my coaching voice, my voluntary, deliberate coaching voice, I help myself to create a different emotion. Not the one that I have, but the one that I want to have. Then I like players to activate, that's me. I like that after play took a little bit of extra time to slow down, they activate themselves. And then they need to prepare for the next point. And I think that these days I like players to set, if they're serving with their feet in the right place, bounce the ball with the racket, while mentally they create a plan for the point that is about to be played. And this I leave the coaches with the pleasure to give their players the parameters that they need to use to be able to develop a plan for the next point. And then finally, when players bounce the ball with their hand, which everybody does, I think that there should be no decision anymore, and the decision is already made. It's just a visualization of what the point is going to look like, and then there's kind of I feel it, then I execute. Now, saying this sounds pretty easy, but the body language control needs to be trained. The coaching voice needs to be trained a lot. The ability to plan a point needs to be developed, and then the ability to visualize and imagine a point is an ability in itself. So all this needs to be worked on.
So obviously these would need to be practiced ahead of time. So plenty of repetition before they get to the tennis matches, so they get to execute it a little bit more automated, right? And we also know that confidence plays a big role into the narrative, right? And how confident you're going to be to tell yourself the right things and pump you up and bounce back to get to the next point. How do you help a player that maybe is not winning or not performing as well, although they're working really hard, they're practicing, but the results are not yet coming? How do you help them gain that confidence and help them keep working hard and look forward to the next match until the results will come?
Well, let's say this. Confidence is a word that probably is overused and not necessarily in the right way. The confidence that derives from winning matches or by feeling my forehand and my backhand really good is the easy confidence. You know, everybody can have it. I play great today. I believe in myself. You know, that's an easy one, right? The harder one is when you need to believe in yourself, and not necessarily in your forehand or your back. You need to believe in yourself, in your ability to learn, in your ability to problem solve, in your ability to deal with challenges, in your resilience, in your determination, in your character. You know, that's where the real confidence is. So that's where I work. You know, as you said, you know, what happens if I don't win for 5-6 matches in a row, which at the Pro Tour, if you're not Djokovic, happens, right? It happens to everybody. If I play my 7th match after 6 losses, I need to believe in myself to win, but I cannot count on my 6 wins because I had losses. So I need to be able to use a narrative where I acknowledge my ability to deal with adversities. I think that's where the true confidence is. You know, I believe that I can learn. I believe I can get out of this because I believe in me, in my character strength. So that's when it becomes a little more difficult, and there is a little bit of work, a lot of work that needs to be done. But a player basically, if want to build his self-efficacy or self-believing in himself, is going to have to be very, very deliberate in the way she acts and the way she talks to herself. You know, any negative sentence that tells you that you're not good enough is going to be internalized. You need to avoid all that. Any body language or behaviors that show that you are not believing in yourself should be avoided. So at the end, you know, as we say, sometimes you have to fake it until you make it, but there's a lot of work into that.
And like you said, a lot of it comes down to just believing or maybe prioritizing what you're emphasizing during that process. Is it the results, or is it the process of becoming a stronger, bigger person that can overcome adversity, that can, you know, keep fighting until the results will come? And the shift is very, very different because you're no longer focusing on the external, which is not something that we control, but you're focusing on the internal parts, which is something that we can control and can continue to build and develop, right? Because how much time is spent focusing on the exterior?
This comes down to motivation. You know, basically you enter the motivational aspect, and I like to explain to my players that motivation is not just the quantity. You know, I am very motivated or I'm not motivated. You know, that is sometimes I think is misspelled. You know, that is the inspiration that I get from the motivation. To me, motivation is a term of quality. You know, I have high quality motivation, or I'm motivated by, you know, frivolous things. When I ask a player, why do you compete? And they tell me, I compete because I want to become number one. that is not a motivation, that is an objective. It's a completely different thing. You know, if I ask, then tell me why you want to become number one, and they tell me because I will be famous and rich, now we're talking about frivolous motives, that when the work becomes really hard, they were not going to inspire anymore. So to me, it is much more powerful to, first of all, play for the love of the game. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, but compete and play to create a better version of yourself. So personal growth to me is probably the most important motivating factor for an athlete. You know, continuous trying to become better than what I was, but not just technically. You know, even the way I deal with adversity, the way I respect people, the way I'm kind to myself. You know, so I become a stronger, more functional human being. And to me is what I try to convince players that all this ordeal of competitive tennis is all about, creating a better version of yourself. And for some, it's a question of also developing yourself in such a great way that you can become a great contributor to a bigger picture. So you can become a leader in your community or in your family or among your friends. Sometimes especially for the young athletes, I talked about the importance of contributing to the development of your future self. You know, your future self is not quite you, but it is you. I always say that is a person that is there sitting down, waiting for you to do the right thing. And if you do the right thing, he's going to benefit from it, or she's going to benefit from it. So that is where I put the contribution in at the young age. You know, but I think that, yeah, if I focus on points, rankings, ratings, trophies, money, it's definitely not going to take me where I need to go for a sustainable amount of time. If I focus on improvement, growth, contribution, I will have energy to sell for a long career.
And how does that translate also in managing the extensive schedule that a player has, especially on the Pro Tour? If you could maybe share some of the experiences that your players are having, where, like you said, maybe they're not winning, or they're winning some, but they're not maybe winning to the level that they want to win, or the rate that they would want to win. And they also have to, put up with this extensive schedule that's very back-to-back. There's not a lot of downtime. So there's a lot of determination, perseverance that needs to exist, and something needs to fuel that, right, to keep you going. So what can you share with us from your experiences in that regard?
I think that the most important thing is to protect the well-being of the player. So there has to be a very good balance of stress and recovery during the year for a player. If you neglect to do that, obviously burnout or unhappiness or even injuries is what comes. So I think that one of the biggest skills the coach with the team, if you want a mental coach as well, is to create a scheduling and a way of living this life that promotes the well-being of the player. I feel that if the player is somehow feeling good about himself or herself, might be in a better position to perform.
Well said, well said. So let me ask you this. A lot of our coaches would probably want to know, we see players in today's age playing Grand Slams, playing these major tournaments, and they're very accomplished, right? They compete at the highest level, they have this extensive experience, but they seem to constantly look into their box for support or for guidance, or maybe just, reassurance. What can you tell us about that, and how do you see that, how that has shifted over the years?
Well, since when I started coaching, I actually traveled the world with 2 or 3 players, and I was alone. So the box didn't exist. So that's the biggest shift. And there is a little more money right now, to say the least, at the professional level. So players tend to create a team around themselves. And I think that's a skill in the first place, to make sure that your team is composed by the people that you truly need and you truly want to have. I have to say, and I agree with you, I'm not a big fan of what's happening these days, with players constantly looking at their team for guidance, particularly when they look at their team to unleash or unload their anger. That to me is completely inappropriate. When I see players yelling at their boxes, because those 3 people are the only ones that really care about you in that big stadium, so you better treat them right. I like to do this, at least with the athlete that I work. I like to take them through a journey where they start that they are somehow dependent. I like to say that they are passenger on a bus that they don't even know where it's going. And that's kind of where they're kids and the parents tell them everything they need to do, coaches tell them everything they need to do. Little by little, I want them to become more engaged into telling where they want to go. They might not be on the driver's seat yet, but they want to start telling to the driver, I think you should turn here, I think you should turn there, with the objective eventually to get the driver's seat and listen to the people behind. So my players go from dependency to independence to leadership. I want my players to become the CEO of their teams. So the coach is an advisor. They're all advisors, but the ultimate decision maker has to be the player. In Italy, where we have a lot more impact with everyone, we discourage coaches to tell players what to do during a match. But we want to create those skills in training. And we want players to be able to make their decision in matches, right or wrong. Because not necessarily the coach is right and the player is wrong. So we start from there. And I think that when the player is capable of deciding where to return from, where to serve to, without asking, then his level of confidence is going to be much higher. That's where I want my players to go to. So I don't love when I see players, I don't mind them when they communicate with the box in a certain way, but I definitely don't like when they ask the coach, what do I serve to, Lorena? And I think that's not cool.
So it kind of brings us back to that same concept of developing, like, what is your focus throughout this journey of becoming an amazing tennis player, a very accomplished tennis player? Who are you becoming, right? Where is the focus on the external things, or is it something that you want to focus internally to become this very strong person that can make decisions on their own, can bounce back from adversities, can deal with bad calls and unfair situations, because that happens all the time, because those will carry you.
Those are transferable skills.
In real life.
That's what I work with players. I basically say, okay, motivation for me is fundamental to the inner voice. If I have motivations that are relevant to me, then probably have the right emotional state to be able to go out there and compete. And we frame right away. We use tennis as a vehicle to build you in the person that you want to be. Okay, so we have many years in front, and we are going to work on to that. We take the challenges that tennis present as opportunities to test yourself if you are getting stronger in the way you respect people, in the way you are determined, willing to fight, problem solving and stuff. So I don't tell them what's right, what's wrong. We have sessions where we discuss the players kind of with their family values, whatever, has to tell me this is kind of what kind of person I want to be, and these are the skills or character muscle that I want to develop to be such a person. And then we use tennis as a vehicle to do that. I work with other sports as well, so every sport is a vehicle. It's not final to itself. Everyone eventually stops playing and move on to a different life, and we have to equip our athlete for that life that comes after. Some of them will move there with a lot of money, and some will have to probably find other occupations. But the success of what I think we do as coaches is beyond the trophies, is the person that moves on. And I think that, at least me, I want to foster independency, not dependency.
Well, we're getting close to an end. And every episode ends with 3 match points, 3 takeaways that you would like to send to our coaches. What are 3 match points for today?
First thing first, be aware that your words will impact the narrative of your player. So make sure that you polish it. Make sure that you speak the language and the tone of voice that eventually you would like to see that player carry over. It's a big responsibility, in my opinion, that coaches have. To make sure that their athletes move on with the narrative that was impacted by you in a positive way. The other message that I would like to give coaches now in this stage of my career is that continue being curious and continue learning. Take opportunity to find mentors in every area. Be curious not just in the technical, strategical, but mental, physical, nutrition. And surround yourself with knowledgeable people so that you can learn. things continue to evolve, so nothing is static, but at the same time continue investing in yourself, surrounding yourself with people, and you represent USPTA, so you offer many courses that they can take advantage of to have some extra. The third one, I don't know, I think that if we want to have athletes that are enjoying their journey, I think we have to enjoy our journey too. So make it enjoyable for yourself, I guess. That would be my third advice.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Lorenzo, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you. We could go on for hours. I wish we had more time, but thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your knowledge. We really appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for your invitation. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching, everybody. That was it for today. We'll see you next time.